Thank you very much. And thank you for the great introduction and welcome everybody. As Mohammed said, my name is Peter Bojo. I'm a partner solutions architect at GitLab. So my job is to work with our partners, one being Amazic, and through them support our customers and of course our extended partner network. So that's why I'm here. And the topic at hand is, as Mohammed said, GitLab 17, and for that, let me just share my screen real quickly. So I prepared a bunch of slides, but unfortunately the host has disabled sharing my screen. So Milo, maybe you can enable me to share my screen. I guess you are the host. Not sure. Why can't I? I'm a panelist. I should be able to. Oh, now it works. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, let me. Okay, it should be visible, Mohammed. Is it all good? Okay, thank you. Just confirming. Okay, so the topic at hand is, yes, GitLab 17, unlocking the new possibilities of GitLab 17. As I've already said, my name is Peter Bojo, partner solutions architect, so I wouldn't like to spend more time with that fact. And what we would be looking, so as you are already familiar with GitLab, as you are already familiar with our release cadence, right? So we are releasing a new major version every year, usually by this time, by the middle of the calendar year. But we are also releasing a new minor version every month. So if you are familiar with our release structure, you know that we always release a ton of stuff. So like really a lot of new features or a lot of small incremental improvements to our existing features. It's very rare when we release like a full-blown, completely fleshed out feature like that. We usually internalize the DevOps approach and we iterate and we release early, look for feedback. Because of this fact, as I said, we always have tons of stuff in each of our releases. So obviously in this call, I won't go through all and every single feature or every single thing that we released in GitLab 17, because then we would be here, I don't know, tomorrow until the same time, basically. What I would like to really do is to concentrate on the most important stuff, the most relevant stuff, the things that are really changing. I wouldn't say like fundamentally, we are not changing anything fundamentally in this release, but at least changing significantly how customers can interact with GitLab, and thus, I believe, can be useful information for you as well. So where I would like to start is the CI/CD catalog. And to be honest with you, this will be the bulk of my presentation today because the CI/CD catalog is such an important piece of, I wouldn't call it infrastructure, a bunch of features together, which again doesn't change fundamentally how you can work or your customers can work with our CI/CD features, our CI/CD pipelines, but it is just such a big quality of life change, to be honest with you. If you have been, and I assume you've been working with CI/CD pipelines in GitLab, they are awesome, but they are also complex. And what we are trying to do here is to make the experience of working with CI/CD pipelines in GitLab just more smooth, just less complex, just more maintainable and more controllable. That's also a keyword, at least from my point of view as somebody who was a software engineer before joining GitLab. So the way it works, like if you've been working with other solutions on the market, this might not be unfamiliar to you, but if you haven't worked with such a feature like the CI/CD catalog, and I will show you in a minute or so how it actually looks like in practice. So I prepared a short demo just to showcase, okay, what we are really talking about here on the UI level, so like the interaction level. So basically, the CI/CD catalog is a I mean, yeah, in the side, yeah, we described the repository. That's a bit of unfortunate usage in terms of GitLab, because repositories are usually containing source code, right? So imagine the CI/CD catalog really like a catalog of these CI/CD components, and I will explain shortly what a CI/CD component is and how they work. But it's kind of like a central place where you can find all the different reusable CI/CD pipeline parts inside GitLab. So just to relate it to how it currently works in GitLab, right? We already have CI/CD templates that you can include in your CI/CD pipelines, right? So you can build up a really, really complex CI/CD pipeline just by incorporating CI/CD templates from other projects. But this has many issues. And this is what we are aiming to solve with the CI/CD catalog. So instead of having these projects set up one by one, customized to each and every organization, what we are trying to do, we are trying to offer a centralized solution that's the same across all GitLab installations, gitlab.com, GitLab self-managed, GitLab dedicated, doesn't matter. If you are a GitLab user, you can interact with CI/CD components the exact same way, regardless of what company or organization or project you are working on right now. So that's the overview. Let me dig a little bit into the details, and I think, and I hope I will be able to showcase you all the benefits that adopting the CI/CD catalog and through that CI/CD components instead of CI/CD templates can bring to your customers. So components are the building blocks. These are the things that we store in a CI/CD catalog, right? So catalog, CI/CD catalog is a catalog of CI/CD components. Everybody in the organization can see the same kind of components in the catalog. There are options to scope your CI/CD catalog, so you can scope it and components, so you can scope it to projects and groups. That's doable. But you can have a centralized repository in case of the catalog where you can put your components into, and everybody in your organization can see those. But coming to the building piece here, the component is basically, I would say, again, an evolution of our CI/CD templates. It's so visible if you go to the documentation. And so we have a documented tutorial about how to migrate from CI/CD templates into CI/CD components. I'm not joking, it's literally copy paste and then adding a couple of extra lines to your component definition, and then you have a CI/CD component. So like semantically, there's nothing new. You don't need to like redo all of your templates, and having components doesn't mean that we are deprecating the usage of CI/CD templates anytime soon, right? So if you are sweating already, like, oh my God, I will need to work so much to migrate all of my customers from templates to components, it's not happening anytime soon. We are not planning to do that. This is the next evolution of CI/CD templates, but it doesn't mean that you need to like rush and migrate everything. Obviously, there are benefits of that, and I will talk about that in a minute, but like there's no requirement you to do so to be able to work with CI/CD pipelines inside GitLab. The thing with components is that, as you can see in the right side of the screen, they are literally like templates, but the big difference is that, let me just check. Yeah, exactly. This is what I want to talk about. You have inputs, and this is the most important thing about components. So like, yes, it's a very nice thing that we have the catalog and you can store your components there. It's easily discoverable. It's easily discoverable by everybody in your organization, but there's just one thing, and that's a nice thing on its own. But the real power and the real, how to say, fix to templates is CI/CD inputs. If you work with CI/CD pipelines in GitLab and templates as part of that, I'm 100% sure that you run into an issue where you defined a pipeline, you included some template, and you wanted to set some variables inside your pipeline. And because the same variable have been defined in the template as well as in your own pipeline, you got a clash thing overridden each other. So like, because these are just two separate CI/CD pipelines, a lot of times you have clashes or overlaps in the configuration. It's not a pleasurable experience or a very good experience to debug these kind of issues. With inputs, this is being fixed, because inputs, you can think about inputs like CI/CD component is just a CI/CD template, right? Just as before. But here you can define a bunch of inputs that work like component scoped variables. So this way you can completely avoid this problem of clashing environment variables inside your pipelines, because the variables that you define as inputs, if you are a software engineer, or if you've ever written a line of software or source code in your life, you can think of them as really like function parameters, right? So if you get a parameter in most programming languages, not all of them, the parameter that you get in a function parameter list are scoped to the function itself. It works the exact same way with CI/CD inputs. So this is one of the most important things to be aware of when you are working with CI/CD inputs, components instead of pipelines and templates. But of course, you can build a component without inputs. It's not necessary to have inputs. But if you are using variables in your CI/CD templates and you've already got bitten by that, then yeah, consider components, and as part of components, consider inputs. So yeah, these were the most important things. The catalog itself, as it stands, the inputs that you can have on components. Two more important things that I believe are really valuable if you are working on a big group or multiple projects or a big organization. That's when these things really shine, and the components and the inputs and the catalog really shine when you have to manage like hundreds of projects, hundreds of groups in GitLab. One is that semantic version ranges for published CI/CD components, and the other thing is that now we have a standardized publishing process for publishing components into the catalog. So what do I mean by this? Again, I'm trying to relate components to templates, right? So it was possible up until this point to version your templates. We do that in GitLab, right? If you use GitLab Ultimate, the way you include our scanners in your pipelines is by including our CI/CD templates. That's fair enough. And you can reference certain versions of those templates by referencing a tag or a Git hash in the commit history. This is now standardized with components. So like you have actual semantic versioning with CI/CD components. It works really nicely. Just like, for example, just to relate it somewhere like on Docker Hub, right? Where you reference like, I don't know, the version 2 of a container, and not just Docker Hub, any Docker container registry, version 2 of the container. If there's a version 2.1 or 2.2.0, those will be pulled automatically. So you can really specify if you would go with major, minor, or patch version. You can do the same with components. And it's, again, a framework inside GitLab. And it's really, really easy to implement it this way. And as part of that, to achieve this, we also have a standardized publishing process. So we are building our own components, and that's what I will show you shortly. You, as a customer or user of GitLab, you can use the exact same process to publish your own components into your own catalog. And this way, there's no misunderstanding of like, where do I find the catalog fixes that, like, where do I find this component? There's no, you don't need to reference projects anymore. You just reference the catalog, and that's your central storage of all your components. But there's no misunderstanding about how to publish, how to release. You don't have to, I mean, with templates, you can already agree on a versioning strategy, but then it's, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's very difficult to standardize that and to demand that everybody in your organization is following that process, especially if it's hundreds of projects, hundreds of groups. With the CI/CD catalog and the components, there's one way of doing it, right? There's no misunderstanding about how we version, how we release, how we build these components. And that's really the power here. And with semantic versioning, it's industry best practices as well, that everybody in this open source world, which we are living in, is familiar with. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Before I move to the what's next, spoiler alert, I would like to show you what's there right now, right? So how this that I just discussed until now, how this all works in practice, how does it all look like on the UI in GitLab 17. So let me just show you that. So here we have the CI/CD catalog. Let me zoom on in a little bit because I hope it's readable, because the font here is really small. Let me do it this way. So you can find it on the explore page /CI/CD catalog. And this is on gitlab.com. Really important that gitlab.com has a central catalog that everybody can access on gitlab.com. You, as a gitlab.com customer, can have your own catalog that only you, your organization, so that your namespace can access. And if you're a self-managed customer, you can have your catalog on your self-managed instance, which is only available just as the rest of your self-managed instance to people who you give access to, right? So I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have the central repository, of course, of CI/CD components, but you can build your own completely independent of anybody, essentially, just like with your code, just like with everything with GitLab, right? So as you can see, nothing revolutionary here. I mean, this is just a list of things. But let me show you, for example, the SAST one, this one. So just as an example of how a component looks like in real life, right? So if you are using gitlab.com, GitLab Ultimate, you are already familiar with our SAST, Static Application Security Testing Scanner that we have, right? And up until this point, including such a scanner in your project was including, as I said, a pipeline template, right? So like, how do you include this? It's basically, right, include a template. Up until this point, this was the way of including SaaS scanners in your pipelines. And again, this is not going anywhere. It still works. It's just that what our team is doing right now is that they are not necessarily rebuilding. It's a lot of times it's just a repackaging of all of our pipeline templates into components, right? So that's what the team is working on. So going forward, you would be able to use components for everything that you are using templates for right now. And again, you can do it on your own templates, but it's not mandatory at all. But you can see how it works like. So instead of including a template, you just include a component. And everything else is the same. You can define rules. You can define inputs. In this case, with the components, you have two panes, I would say. So this is the detailed view of a component. Here you have the README. This README is coming from the repository of this component, because each component is stored in a repository that you can basically access for the love of God, I can't find it. But essentially, all of the components that we publish are stored in a GitLab repository, right? So you can access those. And this is the README of that repository, essentially. So this is completely custom. If you publish your own components, you can write this README as you would like to. So this is literally just rendering the readme.markdown file in the root of your repository, which contains this component. But this page, the components page, this is automatically generated based on the definition of your component. So when you are defining your component, right, you give it a name and you also give it inputs. And this is what you have here. So this is all auto-generated, no human defined this. It's just as you define the inputs of your component in your YAML file that defines the component, these are getting filled out here. So it's kind of like auto-generated documentation. It's just easier to see what's where. You don't need to rely on a README, which might get outdated, right? Because it's human writable and readable. This is generated based on the definition of the template itself. And pretty much that's it. Component itself. You can see even I am conflating the concepts here. So the README is more about like how you use it, like on a conceptual level, and the components page is more about like, okay, these are the actual stuff that you can play around with and use. You can see mandatory, no mandatory. So again, very much like function parameters in the programming language. Nothing new in terms of like, nobody else have implemented something like this, but this is our next step, our evolution of our CI/CD pipelines and templates. So that's like the present. This is where we are right now with GitLab CI/CD components and our catalog. And I just wanted to touch really briefly on what's coming next, because this whole catalog thing, this whole component thing, I wouldn't say it's a transitory step, but this is just one step in the way we want to take GitLab CI/CD pipelines through. Let's put it that way. So catalog components will stay around. That's solid. They are already production ready. Feel free to use them. But then what's coming next as the next evolution of components and pipelines and all that stuff, we call them CI/CD steps. As you can see in this slide, I noted that they are like the evolution of CI/CD components. On a conceptual level, they are the same as components. So like how to make reusable parts of your CI/CD templates. If you are familiar with GitHub Actions, this is pretty much like that, obviously with a GitLab spin, right? So we put our own spin on it, but conceptually it's more or less the same. So steps are different from components, because components at the end of the day, they are still like merged with the pipeline that you are using them in, much like templates. The only difference in the execution of components is that you have this isolation of the variables, right? That's the only thing on an executional level that's changing with components. With steps, it's changing much more, because steps are, when a step is being executed by a GitLab runner, contrary to how a GitLab pipeline or a template or a component is executed, each step is executed in its own isolated context. So essentially, what happens is that each step, much like components, will have a repository where they are stored, the configuration. And when a step is being executed in your pipeline, the runner will clone the whole repository and execute your step in the context of that repository, which means that steps will be able to bring their own content from their repository, like additional shell scripts or a Terraform file or whatever, really anything that you can store in a Git repository. The steps are taking those with them when they are being executed. And this makes it super easy, finally, to debug locally, not necessarily a full pipeline, but a step, definitely. So because a step is such an isolated piece of logic inside your pipeline, you can easily just download the step on your local machine and execute that with the same executor that the runner is using on your local machine and test your pipelines that way, right? So this will fix the problem, which, again, if you're an experienced platform engineer or anybody who have been working with CI/CD pipelines in GitLab extensively, it's a great pain when you have to debug what's going wrong with your pipeline, right? A lot of times you create a separate branch and then you push to it, commit and push, and then you wait for the pipeline to be kicked off and be executed. And there are ways of doing that locally, so like running pieces or the whole pipeline locally, but they all have their shortcomings because none of them are really first-party GitLab supported ways of doing it. This will be supported by us. This will be first-party. So this will be really, it will make it really easy to debug CI/CD components locally, not component steps, excuse me. What is really cool about CI/CD steps, and this was for me, the first time I heard about this, I was like, what's going on? So you will be even able to execute GitHub Actions inside your GitLab pipeline. So you heard that right. So like you have a GitLab pipeline, you have your steps in your GitLab pipeline, But if you would like to use a GitHub action from the GitHub Actions marketplace, you can just do that natively in a GitLab pipeline without setting up anything that's really complex. I can actually show you in the docs. So it's like literally zoom on in like this. This is how you will execute. So you see, this is a GitHub action coming from this GitHub action on the GitHub marketplace. And this is a GitLab step, right? So step, action, they just live next to each other completely interchangeably, no extra configuration needed. So this is what is coming. Currently, this is, experimental, which means it can change significantly. Please don't rely on it. Likely it will become beta in 17.2, so most likely by the end of July, but that's not written in stone, right? So I'm not making any commitments here. I'm just saying that that's the plan. When they will come out of beta, good question, but I just wanted to put this thing on your radar, right? When you are thinking about writing CI/CD pipelines in GitLab, just keep it in the back of your mind that this thing is coming and it will be awesome. Not to say that components are not already a big deal of quality of life improvement, but this is what's coming next. Okay. Without that out of the way, I would say this was the most important part of 17.0, that we just released the components, the catalog, and we haven't released it yet officially. Steps, you can still try them, but they are experimental. But this is what I wanted to spend the bulk of this presentation with. In the remaining 15 minutes that we have, I want to touch on a couple of other things that I believe are important and can be really useful, especially when you are working with big customers. Most of the things in this release are about that. So for example, what we have on the slide right here, now we have hosted runners on ARM microprocessor architectures. So this is SaaS only, so GitLab.com only. But if you are or your customers are using GitLab.com, now we have these kind of machines. For some workloads, I'm sure you know that these are much more effective. They can come out cheaper at the end of the day. And for some workloads, they are just completely necessary. And we heard the feedback from many of our customers. They are already registering their own GitLab runners with these kind of virtual machines. Now they don't need to do that. They can just use the included CI/CD minutes in their own GitLab.com subscription to use these virtual machines provided by us, just making it easier for everybody. The runner, of course, we upgraded the runner because whenever we release a new version of GitLab, we release a corresponding runner with the exact same version. You know it. It's just easier for everybody to reason about, okay, what version of the runner should I be running? The exact same version that GitLab is running on your servers. Nothing big here, I would say. Now, I mean, apart from one thing, but the most important thing is that it's again become much more stable, much more effective, lightweight, and just stabler, right? We squeezed a lot of bugs in this release. What is important that now it's even easier than before to integrate your runners with Google Cloud. I won't get into the details of that. For those of us who are using Google Cloud, deploying into Google Cloud or running your runners inside Google Cloud, I recommend checking out our documentation, searching for GitLab Google Cloud. There's a bunch of stuff that just makes it much easier to integrate it all together. So that's that, I would say, about the runners. Another really cool stuff that we just released is a new overview panel for value stream dashboards. So value stream dashboards or value stream management is not a new thing in GitLab at all. We have these features for a while now, but up until now, you could only check your value stream metrics on the project or the group level. Now, with this release, it's possible to see it on, if it's self-managed, then on the instance level, right? So everything in your self-managed GitLab instance, or if you are on GitLab.com, for the top level namespace. It doesn't really matter, right, which way you are looking at it. The point is that now we are just elevating these statistics from the group and the project level into the instance, or it's better to say the organization level. So like decision makers can see these statistics, like sometimes with trivial stuff like how many users do we have, how many groups, how many projects, as you can see on the screenshot, but also all the other things that we have in our value stream dashboards, DORA metrics, all that stuff elevated to the instance level, just having this single pane of glass, this full visibility into what's going on in your software delivery projects. Another thing, this is really minor, but this signifies a new, I wouldn't say necessary direction, but a new facet of our value stream dashboards that up until now, you've been able to see how productive, how fast you are moving with GitLab in your DevOps lifecycle. Now we are adding a new bunch, a new group of analytics into the value stream dashboards, which we call AI impact analytics or AI usage trends, however you position it. Right now, it's only about using code suggestions. So through this, you will be able to see as a user of GitLab, as you can see, it's Ultimate only, because this is more geared towards our big enterprise customers, that you can see that what is the productivity impact on your developers or on your overall team of using our code suggestion AI feature, right? So code suggestion is our feature which you can use to generate code as you type, or ask GitLab Duo for explanations about your code, or how to refactor it, or write some unit tests for it. So it's our AI assistant that we have in our product. And the code suggestion feature is this, like suggesting new code or suggesting different kind of changes to your source code. And this feature is all about like measuring the impact of that on your productivity, to see how using this feature makes you go faster with GitLab. And this is just the first one. This is a very wide topic, so to say, or a vast topic. We have a dedicated blog post about this written by one of our AI product managers. It's a really insightful blog about full transparency about the challenges of measuring this kind of stuff, because it's really hard to come up with an objective number like, okay, you become this more productive because using this and that AI feature. And it's even more difficult to do that across products, right? What we are aiming to do here is looking at GitLab, looking inside GitLab, and measuring the productivity in the context of GitLab. So that's the goal with this feature. A couple of other AI updates that I would like to mention. The first one, I really love that. So like Duo Chat is our chatbot as part of our product. If you tried GitLab Duo, you are already familiar with it. And these updates are both about that. So like the first one, I really love that because I had a very funny exchange with GitLab Duo Chat when it was released. Back then, it was powered by this Cloud 2.1 version of Google's large language model. We just updated that to Cloud 3. And when it was still the old model, I was curious, like, okay, this model is from Google, so maybe it can somehow, like use Google Translate. I don't know. So I was giving it a try, like asking something in Hungarian. That's my native language, and I was asking it something in Hungarian. Like literally, I asked it, "Can you speak Hungarian?" That was my question in Hungarian, and the chatbot replied in Hungarian that, "Sorry, I can't speak Hungarian. Can we switch to English?" And I'm like, "But you just replied to me." So that was how it was before. Now with Cloud 3, officially, our supported language for Duo Chat is still English. I have to say that, right? So disclaimer, if the Duo Chat is telling you something completely incorrect in another language, we don't guarantee anything. We don't take any responsibility for that. But funnily enough, just by upgrading the model to the newest version, it just speaks all the languages, essentially. So I can certify that Hungarian works really nicely, but that's like only one person testing it. That's me. At least that's the one person that I know of. So yeah, this is cool, but overall, obviously, this is not the only benefit of upgrading to this model. It's not even an official benefit. Official benefit is that the response time is faster, correctness is better, and yeah, just the whole experience, at least based on my experience, is much better with our Duo Chat now. And the other thing is connected to that is that on GitLab.com, up until this point, you've been able to ask Duo Chat specific questions about GitLab, the product, right? Because Duo Chat, you can ask it anything. It's on the surface, it's generic large language model, right? So you can chat with it about anything technical or even non-technical stuff. On GitLab.com, it was possible to ask about stuff about GitLab, like how do I use this? How do I publish a Docker image? Just making it up as I'm going here, like how do I build a CI/CD pipeline? This kind of stuff. So specific things about the product. Now this is available for self-managed customers as well. Just a bunch of minor but still very important quality of life improvements, I might say, before I close off my presentation here. So these three things, I believe, if you have been bitten by the lack of any of these, then you will really appreciate these three new features. If not, okay, I just want to still bring your attention to these three things, right? So like adding a group to the CI/CD job tokenable list. What I'm talking about here is that up until this point, you have been able to reduce the number of, or increase, whatever you look at it. So basically set up which project CI/CD pipelines can access your project inside GitLab. And it was always a project by project basis. So you can imagine if you wanted to add, I don't know, 50 different group projects that can access your project, that's like adding 50 different items, which is, yeah, painful. Now you can do that with groups, right? So if you have a group and you want to give access to your own project, to all of those pipelines in there, you just give it this group token, and it just works for all the projects inside. That's that. Again, minor thing. It might be a minor thing if you never had to do this. If you had to do this at least once, then it's not a minor thing. Same thing with the other two. Those are all improvements to our pipelines, like overall. Doesn't matter if it's component steps, templates, doesn't really matter. This is the syntax of our pipelines, right? So the rules exist keyword worked a little bit differently up until this point. If you use that on a job scope or on a whole pipeline scope, it still works differently, but now you can be more explicit in terms of like, what do you mean exactly when you use this keyword? I wouldn't like to get into the details of this. It's really complex. Just wanted to call out, if you ever use this keyword, you might have run into this problem regarding how this keyword got interpreted by the runner, depending on where you use this. Now you can be more explicit and less confusion, less bugs to troubleshoot in your pipelines. And the last one, to be honest with you, that's my favorite, and that bitten me personally multiple times already. So I'm really happy to see that finally implemented. We have this after script element in our pipelines, right? Which is basically like, after your script has finished in a job, please run this thing, right? I come from a software engineering background, so I kind of assumed, like instinctively, that it works like try catch or you know, this programming concept when you have something that you want to execute, and if anything fails in that block of code, you want to make sure that this cleanup works all the time. Many programming languages have different, I think in .NET it's called finally, that's what you use. So after script to me was always like that, like this finally keyword. Now, up until this time, it wasn't. So if your script got canceled, something went wrong, something crashed, then the after script haven't run either. This time, from now on, with GitLab 17.0, after script will always run, even when a job is canceled. This might also cause some problems, right? So if you already know this thing, the behavior, and you already built your pipeline taking that into account, this might be an interesting thing to look out for when you upgrade your GitLab version, because now this will run always, even when the job is canceled. So I just wanted to call this out explicitly because of that. We have deployment details page. I wanted to leave this to the end because this is really just a sneak peek. It's not something advanced. I would say it's really just to get it out and get your feedback. I mean, the user's feedback. So this is about like, now you can have a conversation not just on the issue level and the merge request level in GitLab, but on the single deployment level as well. So you can have a dedicated page, like with a unique URL for a given deployment into production or any of your environments. And it just makes it much easier to collaborate because you don't need to go to the deployment list and look for the latest deployment, or go into a pipeline and look for the deployment job and look for the deployment there. Now each deployment has this dedicated page. Right now, again, it's rather bare bones. You can have a conversation there. You can do approvals or denials there. Just wanted to highlight this, that this is there, and we are iterating on building it into an even more complex feature where you can, this can be really kind of like a dashboard into a single deployment that you are working on. I believe it's super useful for platform engineers and operations professionals. And this one, again, just to mention, this is it's a very, very niche, I would say, feature. If you are using GitLab Dedicated, which is our third offering next to GitLab.com and self-managed, we have this switchboard, which is kind of like self-service configuration of your GitLab Dedicated environment. Now you can do more on a self-service manner there, and you can see the result of the configuration being deployed or being changed in your environment. So it's again just seeing what's going on with your GitLab Dedicated instance. For those of you who are using GitLab Dedicated or have users, customers who are using GitLab Dedicated, you will get a dedicated update for the dedicated customers about this set of features. And yeah, pretty much that's it. I know it was a lot. I tried to narrow it down as much as possible and focus on the most important things. I hope it was still useful for everybody. And of course, if you have any questions, we are more than happy to support you with those as well. Send it our way, my way, Mohammed's way. We will get back to you with the answers. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Peter. Thank you very much. That's a lot of information, the catalog and all that. So I think not sure if everyone already played with it, but some probably already had done it if I look at the list. If there are any questions, can you please use the chat window and put your question in there? Then we might answer that on the spot. And anyway, you will receive an email with this recorded, the recorded version. And if you have any questions, after this, there's also the email address and the credentials of Peter, so you can connect him directly if needed.
Exactly.
So let me see if there's any questions in the chat window. Not that I can see now. Great.
I think we are good.
People are usually shy. Why should you put a question out there now? But someone is writing. Yeah. No. All right. Again, everyone who joined, thank you very, very much. Let's see what we can do, all of us, and with the customers, with this new version. And also, as you also said, there's also, I think every month, right, minor versions during the year, right? So it's not like waiting a year and only every month there's new stuff, and you can also see it in the roadmap. So again, thank you very, very much, Peter. Thank you very much for outlining all of that, and have a very great day. And until the next time, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.